Welcome to Game Talk Radio with your hosts, Greg and Jen, bringing you their take on this week's hottest gaming news.
Welcome back to Game Talk Radio. This is episode 15.
15.
Hello, Jen.
Hello, Greg.
How are you today?
I have a headache.
Oh, boo. Well, as always, as always, you are a trooper, though.
No,
we always push on. And so today, I'm going to try to do this really cheesy, horrible theme thing. So I've got the theme for today's podcast.
Yes.
Is dirty, stinking thievery.
Thieves. There's
Theft.
no honor among them.
What is worse than a thief? Well, lots of things, like murders, I guess. But thieves are bad, too.
Two thieves.
Two thieves are worse. Okay. Yes. That's just math, basically. I mean, you can't beat that. So we're going to talk about a couple different things. So we're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch being stolen. We're going to talk about hundreds of rare European Super Nintendo games being stolen.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about Nintendo stealing money from its fans by selling us DLC packs for the new Zelda game.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about Sony trying to steal the Switch's thunder.
Oh, yes.
With the new handheld patent.
Yeah.
So to begin, we want to start talking about the stolen Switch.
Right. So on Thursday, this past Thursday, a user called Hip Hop the Robot, which, for the record, I think is
Great
hilarious. Only second to Hip Hop the Hippopotamus. He posted a video of just so happened, I was lucky, my retailer that I purchased and pre-ordered a Switch from sent me a Switch early.
Which would be about 2 weeks early?
About that. It comes
be
out
almost
on
2 weeks early. Yeah.
March 3rd.
Which is plausible. I mean, I've never gotten anything that early, but clearly they're being shipped out and getting ready for a big launch. So yeah,
right.
Possible.
Well, as it turns out, that Switch system was stolen from a distributor, and it looks like the people who did the actual theft were identified, terminated from their employment, and under investigation by local law enforcement.
So it looks like someone at some distribution center, I mean, they were named nameless, but the only place I could think of that got it this early would be big ones. So Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy, GameStop, that sort of retailer, because other retailers, even ones that if I would purchase some from some of my as a wholesale thing, they wouldn't have gotten them that quickly either because they're too low on the totem pole. So it could have been any of those big ones.
It could even be a step further, in their actual distribution center, not just
Sure.
Are you talking singular stores or?
I was thinking the whole distribution center.
Okay.
So they got shipped to Amazon and then they got stolen from the Amazon warehouse, or they got stolen from the Best Buy corporate warehouse or something like that.
The user actually, once he found out, Hip Hop the Robot, once he found out that the unit was actually stolen, because apparently I read an article that said he works as a barista. So it's not like they sell gaming systems at the local Starbucks. So wherever he got it from, he didn't know it was technically stolen. But once he found out, Nintendo approached him or contacted him in some way and said...
Probably through his YouTube channel or whatever. Because the whole reason this came to light was because he did a YouTube video of the UI. He was... And this is actually something we'll get into a little bit as well, but he was so eager to be the first one to show it off.
Right.
That he didn't think of the consequences or anything.
No.
But I have to say, okay, so Detective Greg's putting his hat on. Okay, this whole thing stinks to me. For instance, he claims, okay, the Hip Hop, what's his name?
Hip Hop the Robot.
Hip Hop the Robot, okay. So Hip Hop the Robot claims that he got it early from his retailer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not possible. It wasn't shipped to him by mistake. It was stolen from somebody, and then he bought it from someone stolen. Now, I would buy if he said he found someone on Craigslist who got their shipment early and he bought it from them. But he says flat out that a retailer shipped his pre-ordered Switch early and now magically they're stolen and he received a stolen but doesn't know anything about it. How, if you bought it from someone who, clearly they stole it, so it's not like it got shipped to him from it's not whoever stole it from the Amazon warehouse, if it was Amazon, said, hey, this is your Amazon package. Just got to send me a $500 cash, and I'll make sure your order's fulfilled, right?
It just seems a little weird.
So my BS meter is just blaring on this one. So I would argue maybe he didn't know it was stolen. I could believe that.
But
he obviously paid a ton extra for it.
Right.
If he got it, and he paid cash for it on the side somewhere, like on Craigslist or on something like that. Like, he had to get it that way. There was no store that he was going to get that from. It's not like the person who stole it sold it to a store like mine, and then my store sold it to him.
Well, like he said, I mean, it could be a complete fabrication that he's actually a barista and whatever. I mean, it's just as easy to say that as it is, oh yeah, I work at GameStop or whatever, or I work in a distribution center. I mean, he sent it back to Nintendo.
Which I also find very strange.
I mean, you can even go in a completely opposite direction in terms of conspiracy theory and say Nintendo gave him the unit so he would post a video and then create all this hubbub because now his video has a bunch of views.
So
so
you're talking,
can make anything a conspiracy.
You're talking about like viral videos. Okay.
I really just think that somebody thought that they were going to make a quick buck because they work at like an Amazon distribution center, a Walmart distribution center, or whatever, and didn't think anybody would notice. Took some home and then sold them.
And unluckily sold it to the one guy who was going to put a YouTube video up.
Well, if you got,
get them all busted.
Honestly though, I have a YouTube account. I don't post videos. I do it just to watch content, right? But if I got a system 2 weeks early, you bet I would put a video on YouTube about it. I think anybody would.
I totally would, especially with what we do here. I mean,
but you can't play anything. That's the thing. You've got no games. You just have the system. So what were you expecting to happen? You get a 3-minute video of the UI. It's not that exciting.
Yeah, I mean, he just wanted to be first, which goes to that whole culture lately of, with news sources too, and clickbait and that sort of stuff. Like, everyone has to be out first. He doesn't care how you get it or what makes it, like what the facts are. Let's just get the article out first. If you're pretty sure, get it out. This feels kind of the same to me. It's like, he didn't care about the consequences. He had to know. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, there's only a reasonable amount of plausible deniability, and I'm pretty sure that he had to, unless he's a total idiot, which I doubt, since he was smart enough to put the new video on YouTube, which maybe wasn't smart, because clearly it's what sparked this whole thing.
True.
But, so then he does all that, and then we're supposed to like feel sorry for him, like he got bamboozled or something. If you ever buy a console before launch from I won't even say a shady person, I'll just say from a person like through a non-retail chain, it's most likely stolen. I mean, that's just, it makes sense.
Right. I mean, I would agree with that. My first question would be, how did you get this?
Yeah.
It's not out yet.
Well, sometimes people even bring us games or systems that just came out like a day or two earlier, like a brand new, almost like new condition Xbox. And we'll actually have to tell people, hey, do you have the original purchase receipt? Because, this is just so new that we have to have the receipt to verify that, you purchased it and just don't want it anymore. As opposed to just like looking at a blind eye and be like, oh, they seem trustworthy, it's probably fine.
And you can't tell when you look at a person. Like, you're not supposed to make snap judgments. I mean, I have returned things, and I feel really shifty when I return things, because I'm just like, what if they think that I'm like returning it for some reason? Like,
right.
We bought those two
the Michael Jackson experiences for PS3.
So long story short, we were at a store, saw these Michael Jackson PS3 games marked down to $1.
Okay, that game's barely worth $1 probably, but it was I see a game that's brand new for $1 and I'm like, you know what, I could probably buy that, and maybe it'll be worth money someday, or I can sell it at the store for $5 or something.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking.
So we buy them, and then as it turns out, they got rung
through.
They were scanned, and I didn't notice until later that they actually scanned into the system at $10 a piece.
Which is absolutely not worth it. Which might have happened. Do you think they were supposed to be marked at 10? And whoever went crazy with the label gun put $1 instead of 10?
No, because it was like $10.96, and it was $1.
Okay, that makes sense.
Label.
Okay.
And I've had issues with that before at a store. You'll see like an end cap where, you know, this product is 79 cents, and when you ring it through or scan it into the like the self-checkout, it rings up as 99 cents because somebody didn't do their thing, their due diligence, and update the pricing. And that's happened to me on several occasions. And I'm that person, or I try to be that person unless I'm in a hurry, where I would just, you know, say, excuse me, this is supposed to be 79 cents.
And then you start, but you, like you said, you start to feel bad because then you go to take it back and you almost feel like you're doing something wrong. Like you're guilty of something. Yes. And it's like, and then of course one of the games had like some of the plastic had started to come off, which we didn't notice when we bought it. Or I'd noticed it a little bit, but I was like, well, it doesn't matter. We're just going to resell it. It's new. And then of course, when you go back there, it's like, now you have to try to explain to them, oh, well, you know.
Like, well, I didn't actually open them. And so, you know, the girl at the service counter is like trying to pry it open. And it's like, well, obviously, since you can't get it open, there's a chance that I probably didn't open it either. And that is a very true statement. So, I mean, honestly, I feel like this guy, if it's a guy, I'm making an assumption.
That's true.
I feel terrible, but I mean, I saw the video and the hands are more mannish, I guess.
Okay, fair enough.
But anyway, he probably felt like he was stumbling into something great. Somebody got their order in early and somebody cut him a deal, and then he finds out, oh crap, they're stolen. Because sometimes, like, he might think that stores like GameStop have their switches in the back room right now.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's possible. Right, which they don't right now. And if I had to guess, just knowing what I know, and this has nothing to do with last week's conversation, if I had to guess, I would say it was probably GameStop. Just because their central warehouse, I would think, has a lot less checks and balances and measures for some of that. So what a lot of people don't realize, now this happens a lot in retail theft. Like, I want to say there's a statistic out there. I don't know the exact number anymore, but when I was working at GameStop, it was something like 75% of all theft was internal. Which means that people working for your store or your company were the ones stealing it.
Well, because when you think about it, if you work at a distribution center, when they initially come in, you probably scan them all, boop, 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 and then don't check them again until they ship out.
Right. I mean, we did some crazy stuff for a while there because there was a lot of system theft. So people would try to be creative. I mean, these are all things that people had tried before, so we knew what to look for. But like, for instance, someone would be like, oh, I'm going to go take out the garbage. They'll take a couple 3DS systems, throw them in the garbage, bag up the garbage, take it outside, throw it in the dumpster, and then their buddy will be there. Yeah, their buddy will be there, or they'll go out after close, rip open the dumpster, take the DSs out. You know, because GameStop had, as much as I found this offensive, they had it for a reason, and they had something called the bag check policy.
Okay.
So you actually had to take your pockets out of your empty your pockets and stuff before you could leave. Like a supervisor had to look at you and watch you pat yourself down, show that you weren't taking any merchandise out of the store. And, you know, at the time I was like, oh, that's just what we do, you know. And then later I realized, man, how really abrasive that is and how untrustworthy it is. But that's a real thing. And I don't know if they still do it, but that was a really big thing when I was there. And there's all the, like people would also take a console out of the box, leave the empty box in the storeroom. So we had to start doing system counts every single day.
Oh my god.
So like every day you'd open the store, you'd have to scan every system to make sure that number matched.
Wasn't there a story that happened at Target, I think, where somebody returned a PS3 box, but inside was just a wooden, like it was made out of wood.
Oh.
To weigh the box down.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, yeah.
And I think it even said, like, funnily enough, it wasn't funny because it was obviously somebody's job was at stake, but it said like PS3 and Sharpie on it or something.
Like whoever did it was just a little extra, being an extra little jerk on top.
Screw you, yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of creative ways people could steal. So I would say, just based on what I know, and I don't know anything about Best Buy or Amazon's distribution, but I feel like Amazon does so much of it that they have to have a system for theft at their main facilities. Like, I know they have like fences and check-ins and stuff like that, like FedEx does when you try to go in there. Like, you can't just walk in, you know? So, you know, I probably shouldn't even assume that, but that's just like what it feels like to me. So if that's true, so someone gets it out of there, however they do it, they get out there. The only way to sell that's through, like, say, Reddit or like a Reddit game sale thing or Craigslist or eBay. eBay is probably not, because I don't know how you'd find one that's actually in someone's hand right now, because there's so many up there for sale.
Like, oh, there's going to be a 3-week waiting list. It's like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, buy now for pre-order. So, but that guy has to take some responsibility, the guy who bought it, because he has to know that was probably secured through nefarious means.
Well, and I really hope that he's cooperating with whoever's doing any sort of investigation, whether it's local law enforcement or because it had to have been local.
Well, I'm assuming, that's a good question, because here's what you have to think. So it's almost like I'd like to know who initiated the entire thing. So if Nintendo saw this video, maybe they somehow caught a serial number or they did something. Because how'd they identify that system and where it was? Because do you think Nintendo's investigation's what sparked the whole thing?
That's why I think that he sent it back. He sent it back
and then they tracked where it was stolen from.
Well, I mean, it depends on how quickly all of that happened, because they may have contacted him and he says, well, I'm going to send it back. And they say, okay, before you do, tell us the serial number.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll bet you it was something like that. Because
it had to have happened
with the serial number, they can track exactly what retailer it went to.
Oh, yeah.
And then they could contact that retailer and say, this was stolen here. And then once they check the cameras,
the videotape.
Interesting. See, we just solved the crime.
We
solved the mystery.
We should be hired by Nintendo.
So starting next week, we'll have our detective podcast where we solve. I don't know.
We'll be those meddling kids, is what
we'll be. Those meddling adults in quotes, where we like to play games all day, but we actually have adult responsibilities.
Boo.
I know. So anyway, here's my last take on this.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is out the money.
Yes.
He'll never get his money back, whatever he paid for it. But he's lucky if he doesn't get any jail time or anything. So if he loses his money but then gets out of jail time, I'll call that square. I'll call that this guy was an idiot and he's lucky he didn't get worse, but he's not getting out unscathed. I call that justice.
At least nobody knows who he really is.
Yeah, exactly. He's
gonna have to change every online presence.
And then so we go from that, pretty sad story. It's kind of funny, pretty sad, to an incredibly sad story about theft.
Right.
Now this one, this is also, my detective cap is staying on, because this has a bunch of wonky stuff in it too.
Right.
But go ahead and just kind of lay out for everybody,
okay,
set me up here, lob me the softball, and I'm gonna hit out of the park here, babe.
So there's a Super Nintendo emulator developer, also part-time game archivist.
Okay.
It goes by the handle, I think you would pronounce it Bayou. It's Byuu. He had a plan, okay? And his plan was to get every Super Nintendo game, regardless of region. So, we're talking about all the SNES games from Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, Oceania, all that kind of stuff.
Every game ever.
Every game ever, and digitally preserve it. For posterity, for himself, just to know that he has them, he's done it. And after buying all 725 SNES games from the US, which set him back about $10,000, he went about trying to get all the games in Japan, and then he moved on to other regions. Not an easy task. Already put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. Well, he was working with, now I lost where he was working with. Oh, Smart Human was the person that he was working with.
So that's another collector from...
A European collector. He goes by the handle Smart Human, and he wasn't... Because he spent so much...
Sorry to interrupt. Can we just laugh a little bit at his internet handle?
Hey, well...
Because this story begs to differ.
Well, anyway, he was low... Bayou was low on money, so he said, you know what? Instead of buying the games outright, I'm going to work with this other European collector and do an exchange system. So send me 100 games, I'll archive them and digitally preserve them, send them back to you. And so the first shipment went off without a hitch, no problem there. The process took 10 days. And then comes the next one, which made it all the way to New Jersey before it mysteriously disappeared.
And it disappears.
No record of it. The only thing that Bayou was able to get from the U.S. Postal Service was a small scrap of the brown paper the box was wrapped in, with a note saying, sorry, this is all we have.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. About $10,000 worth of video games
Yeah.
gone.
Okay, so there's a couple factors we have to start thinking about first. One, we know that the post office is like notorious for stuff like that happening, and like they're not the best shipping company ever. Like shipping in general is not great with the big companies.
And if you just do a Google image search about, USPS destroyed my package, you'll see several. And I mean, I have had that happen. It hasn't been a package. It's been a letter that was essentially just shredded to bits, and they stuffed it into a different envelope with a note saying, "Sorry, this is what happened."
Right.
Too bad.
That actually seems, a little offensive to me. Like, the letter is so disingenuous to me. It's just,
we're sorry.
It's like, hey, here's a generic message. If it's insured, here's how you go about insuring it, whatever. So, okay, so we have to take into account that U.S. Postal Service is going to screw up packages and stuff like that. All they have left, apparently, after a machine eats the package, is literally one scrap of paper, which is about twice as big as the envelope that they mailed this guy a letter in. So if you think about 100 Super Nintendo games, European, they fit almost the same. They're curved a little bit more. They're like Super Famicom games. So, like, you put 100 of those into a box, that's a big box. That's a very big box.
But it's not. I mean, it's not like Artorias.
It would be equivalent. It would be equivalent to that, probably.
100 games, though.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be this big. I would say it would be like Amaterasu's box. Like, to me, that seems more, because that's like what, 18.
I'm trying to think. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
square.
7, 8, 9, 10. Let's say 20 games is this high. I feel
how high is that?
Well, I'm using this for you. But okay, so let's say 20 games is 2 feet.
Okay, sure.
So, you can fit like 4 rows of games there, so that's 80 games. Okay, no, you're right, I guess. Yeah, so, okay. I'm with you on that.
This is humongous. This Dark Souls statue box is humongous.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But Amaterasu seems to be a little bit more what I would imagine.
Yeah, so all the...
I mean, look at the picture on the Kotaku article. It's a Ready Post box. I think you get those...
Do you think that's the actual box?
No, I think that's probably when he shipped the first box back.
Okay. Or when he opened the box that he got.
Right.
Okay. So that's, that's a pretty standard... Amaterasu is probably pretty close.
It's like 18 inches tall, maybe 18 inches wide, and maybe 10 inches deep.
So the point of all that really going into it is that what he has left, what the machine gave them back that the post office sent to him, is like it's like a scrap of paper, like it's a joke. It looks like a napkin. It's like a handkerchief that someone unfolded. That's what's left of the package. Okay, so that's a complete box that was, I think, wrapped in paper and then whatever. So okay, so that's weird. Here's what bothers me about this whole thing though too. First of all, it seems kind of weird to me, this guy's project in general. Now, I don't know this guy, and I know he's created a Super Nintendo emulator, and so he's obviously in the scene. And people do vouch for him online, saying that he, is very selfless and he would never rip somebody off. But I don't understand why he wants to rip every game himself. Now, he talks a little bit about how he wants, some ROMs are not the original versions or they've been altered. Well, they all started off as essentially being ripped from the carts. And then after they were ripped to the carts, then someone went in and maybe edited something. But I don't see why he wants to just... I mean, I guess it's just a thing. It's a hobby.
It's a hobby, and it's his... He wants to do it himself. I can fully understand wanting to accomplish that sort of feat on his own. And that's why, he got to a point where he's like, I already bought every U.S. Super Nintendo game. I've already bought every, and Japan has about twice as many Super Nintendo games. And he wanted to keep this up, but he didn't have the funds to do it. So that's why he was doing this exchange program.
Sure, like he found someone who was really cool to do it.
Right.
So the first one...
he was sending it and then sending it back. They were shipping it, so he was sending it back.
So, but it's still a little fishy to me. Like, okay, so he worked out this deal. I mean, first of all, I can't believe he found a guy that agreed to do that. I mean, the guy who sent it to him is not only incredibly trusting, but wow, I mean, it's not just about trust, it's also about things like this could happen.
Well, and if I was by you, I would obviously you're going to have a list of all of the games that you're supposed to get, and I would work my ass off to get those games back. Because, I mean, like you said, how much this smart human user guy trusted him. And I don't think there's anything wrong with him having a trusting relationship with this person, because he already showed that. It just seems weird that he would do it. He would already go through the transaction, the first shipment, and then steal the second one.
Well, it's like we were just watching that American Greed, though. The hook, line, and sinker thing, right? Where, like, you now maybe, and I'm not saying this because I don't know, and I'm just laying the facts out on the table. But we don't know that he didn't do the first box and say, okay, well, here's the next list of games, and he takes these really rare, expensive games, and then that one magically goes missing. Now, but here's the thing. It clearly was lost by USPS. I mean, that's proven. He has the letter, and he's contacted them, unless, again, that's forged. I'm just saying.
I mean, I think it's a canned letter. I don't like. Okay. I've gotten this thing, and it's not. It's they probably have a stack of 1,000 of them, and they just slap them in envelopes. Sorry.
Well, that's true, and or they have them already pre-printed, and it's just waiting for like the address on the envelope and whoever. But so I think that's weird. What's also weird to me then is when you look at this box in particular, it was 100 games. They value it at $7,500 to $10,000. So that means the games were $75 to $100 each.
Right. So it says each. There's some of them were Castlevania 4.
Okay. So Castlevania 4, which I don't know about in Europe, but here that's like a $40 cart. So I'd have to look.
Castlevania Vampire's Kiss, First Samurai, The Fireman, Demon's Crest, Mega Man 7.
And to be fair, Demon's Crest is like $120. Mega Man 7 is like $150. X is like $40. X2 is around $80, $90, and I think X3 is around $150. So I guess that would balance out then if you got some low and some high, but that, you know what I mean? Like, it's because I'm looking at this, right? So okay, so let's say they're doing every 100. Why? I mean, I'm looking at this and it's Castlevania 4, First Samurai, Fireman, Demon's Crest. So it goes from the C's
CD
to the
F M N. I mean, I don't know how they. I mean, you bring up a really good point, which I didn't think of, which is, did he tell him what games to give him?
Did he maybe say, well, let's get all the tougher ones out of the way first, and then send me like all the generic sports ones when you get time? Right. Let me rip the first 100.
I mean, it's interesting. It would be very interesting to see what the first 100 were.
Yeah.
Because that might give us a little bit more indication of, it was, 100 games, and those 100 games were, nothing, versus these 100 games which were worth $10,000.
Or the first 100 games were maybe worth $2,000 or $3,000, and then he knew, he's like, oh, well, now send me this list of good games that are just slightly better that are worth this much. Now, okay, so realistically, the guy seems genuine.
He does.
And there are a lot of people that back him up. And I really doubt if he bought every US game and every Japanese game that he's going to try to steal someone's.
And that's kind of why it was like,
games.
why would he even bother at that point? He's got enough games. He just,
yeah.
I find it so weird that somebody who is so dedicated to this would steal 100 games from some guy in Europe.
Exactly. and his goal is to archive them. So he's got some sort of, in his head, he's got some sort of, moral obligation where he wants to take care of these games. So from like a criminal profiling aspect, he doesn't seem to fit that. He doesn't really have a motive to do it, except that he didn't have the money for them. But he already has all those games in Japanese and English and stuff. So
what would make them that much more...
yeah. So if you ask
necessary, or not necessary, but what would make those so much more attractive than the games he already has?
Right, and he was only going to get away with 100 of them.
Right, because that guy is not going to send him anymore.
It's not like he said, oh, hey, the box guy here, great, I'm sending him back, send me the next 100 and they'll be back to you before you know it. But it wasn't like that. And, he definitely went out of his way. Now he's saying the project's dead for sure. Right. What I also like, there could have been other things he could have done to make this more fishy. Like, there's a lot of fans and stuff have been saying, well, why don't you start a GoFundMe let's all kick in a little bit of money to get this guy his money back, for all the games that were lost.
Right.
And he doesn't seem to want to be a part of that. Like, he didn't want to start one. And because, I think maybe to him, he doesn't want the community's help in that, as to where a thief might say, well, yeah, let's do a GoFundMe and get him his money back. He gets the games, the other guy gets the money, and then the fans or the forum users are like the ones who get left holding the bag,
Right. Well, on his message board, he says a package containing 100 PAL games were sent to me. The USPS has either stolen or lost this package, more likely the former. Do not tell me to wait any longer. I don't want to hear it.
Effing hear it.
Effing hear it. Blank. Cuss. I don't want to cussing hear it. The package is gone and nobody can help. I don't want to ride on some platitude that herp derp, maybe someday they'll show up. They won't. There's no point in false hope. That's cruel to both me and the donor, and it will just delay reimbursement. The next step is to try and obtain the insurance claim. Then I'm just going to start making payments each paycheck to try and reimburse the sender until he's able to repurchase all 100 games locally.
Wow.
Or if he prefers, he can just keep the money that's equivalent to the value of the cartridges. I don't understand why he says that. Or if he prefers, he can just keep
He's just
the
saying
money.
that if he doesn't want to rebuy the games, he doesn't have to. He can just keep the money. Basically like him selling him those 100 games. Sure.
I won't be purchasing the carts to be delivered to me because I don't want to risk shipping them back. So it may not be my fault the USPS cussed us over, but it's my fault for asking for the donation and asking to risk so many games at one time, and as such, it's my responsibility to pay for it.
I mean, he's taken responsibility, and that's more than a lot of people would do.
And he says the donor never asked for reimbursement.
Who are these people?
I don't know. These people are good people.
How much money these people have? They just don't care.
They're just like, it's okay, buddy. Don't worry.
First of all, it's like, hey, don't know you. Heard about you on the internet. You design software that essentially lets people steal games and not pay for them. So you seem like a trustworthy guy. So here's 100 games. First deal goes off great. They trust each other. Here's 100 of my rarest games. They're only worth about 10 grand. Don't worry about it.
No big deal.
They get lost. Guy goes and says, man, I don't know what to tell you. Like, the post office lost games. Don't worry about it. You seem like a good fella. Don't worry about that 10 grand. And then the other guy goes, no. I'm going to pay you back a little bit out of every one of my measly paychecks. I mean, it's crazy, but I'm very impressed by that. I love when people take responsibility for things, and that's two people, like, trying to figure it out. I actually kind of feel bad for this guy now, which is weird, because at first I was a little, like, I was questioning him. But now I feel like he got just ultimately boned, and what he was doing with that archiving process was essentially trying to do something for other people, too.
Right, that's all the emulator. Like, I don't personally agree with emulators because, it for the reasons I've stated before, it's illegal and yada, 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 and what have you. But doing it, like, he's doing it to preserve the Super Nintendo genre. He's not doing it, at least from what I can tell, for personal gain, other than it's a goal he set for himself. He called it the SNES Preservation Project. So he ultimately wants to just have that for posterity and to have it all in one location so that at any point somebody could pull up one of those games and play them, or however he wanted to do it.
It's still, I mean, I think it was a bad idea, but I think he realized that now too. I mean, that's how he sounded in that post, but it is what it is. I mean, that really sucks. Now here's a kind of a weird story I've always had with the post office, and I don't really know how to, like, I don't know how this relates necessarily to this story, right? But there's a really weird situation that happens sometimes. I order a lot of stuff on Amazon for the store. If I order it on a Friday and I have 2-day shipping, Amazon's like, yo, we're going to get it to you on Sunday. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's cool. I don't care. Just get to me by Monday. But now I was even working a couple Sundays ago, and I was there at like 10:30, and all of a sudden at 11:30, I get a text on my phone. We attempted to deliver your package, and delivery was unsuccessful. We'll attempt to deliver your package the following day. And I'm like,
Okay.
Well, no, you didn't try to deliver it because I'm literally here. And so, no, you didn't try to deliver. I don't understand. And so that happened a couple times. In fact, it happened to me like 6 months ago when I was supposed to get this, the version of Virtue's Last Reward with the watch. Okay, so like I had that from Amazon, and Amazon had an issue where the watches got damaged and they got delayed and they had to make new watches, whatever. So it said on a Sunday that it got delivered to me. or that it couldn't be delivered,
Uh-huh.
and then it said we're going to try the next day.
Sure.
And then the next day, it got returned to Amazon.
Oh, I remember
Right?
this.
Remember how mad I was? Because
Yeah.
then Amazon goes, oh, well, you returned the package to us, even though the watch wasn't technically in that package. The only way to get your watch later was to have bought the game. So they're like, oh, well, since you returned the game, you don't get your watch now. And I'm like, well,
Wait a
but I
second.
didn't return
No,
the
I
game. I'm like, it was
didn't.
never attempted to be delivered at my store.
Mhm.
And it's craziness. So then I was chatting with Amazon about this late last week because it happened again, and I was like, I don't understand. Like something's wrong. I said, so the post office is basically lying to you guys if they say they're trying to deliver this on Sunday. But I also don't know that it's the post office. Now, there are post office deliveries like on Sundays.
Sometimes they do
But
that.
they also, like, I've heard of other companies doing it too. Like, they'll hire like a speedy delivery, or they'll hire other companies locally to get stuff on Sundays, which is a really cool service. However, are these companies lying to Amazon and saying, oh, we try to get delivery because we don't do Sunday deliveries? So they're saying, we tried, but we couldn't deliver.
How are they trying to deliver it? Because if they walk up to the door, let's say you're there early doing whatever, and they pull on the door, you would hear that.
I'd be right there. I could see them from wherever I am in the store. Right,
because you've got glass doors. It's not like it's like a wooden door.
It's not the ding-dong ditch masters that are the UPS guys who, like, you hear the doorbell and then you go and the truck's like speeding off down the block
I don't
already.
know how they do it that fast.
I think
they have a pole that they poke the doorbell with.
I think they throw the package at the doorbell. So they straight frisbee your Amazon package.
Okay.
And then just
a guy that I work with, he's a pretty technically savvy kind of guy, and he told me that he has a doorbell that has a webcam in it.
Okay.
So when somebody, it's got a motion detector in it. So as soon as somebody starts walking up the sidewalk to get to his front door, it activates the motion camera.
Okay.
And then it buzzes his phone. And then if it actually does bing bong. And so he showed me, and he's like, okay, so now he accepts whatever. Like, it's almost like a phone call. So he swipes to accept it. And it shows the live feed of his actual front door, and he can talk to the guy because it's got a speaker on it too. So he showed me he records the video too. So anyway, where this was going is that the UPS guy, let's just say it was the UPS guy, he walks up, so it activates it. He gets a phone call, he accepts it. The guy hits the doorbell, bing bong, and he swipes to talk to the guy, and he's like, hello, and he's like, hey, I have a package, can you sign for it? Oh, well, I'm not home right now. And then the guy's looking around going, what?
It's pretty great.
And he's like, well, I'm at work, I'm talking to you through the whatever. And he's like, so can I leave this? And he's like, yeah, it's fine.
That's great.
The package.
I want one of those badly.
I almost bought you one. I was going to buy you one.
Okay, well, let's turn that almost into a
buy.
Into a buy. That's a great gift idea for someone whose birthday is coming up.
I was gonna buy it for your birthday, and you totally ruined.
No, that's okay. Well, you know what I want for my birthday instead, since we're gonna be in Japan for my birthday.
Yes.
All I want, I think this is totally reasonable.
Oh no.
All I think would be fair and nice.
Okay.
We'll go to the new Kojima studio.
Oh sure, yeah.
And all you have to do is set up a tour and a meeting with Mr. Kojima-san himself.
Yes,
and I want to meet him, my idol in the game design world. I'd like to meet him and tour his studio, and that's it. I think it shouldn't even cost you anything, really.
Only if you call him daddy the whole time.
I'll call him the Japanese word for daddy.
Tosan.
Okay, perfect. Sounds great. That's really weird and creepy. Can I call him at once after we're leaving?
Nope, gotta do it the whole time.
Because if I do it right away, then he's gonna be creeped out right away, and I want to at least get one hug in there.
No, they don't hug in Japan.
Well, we hug in America, so
they don't hug in Japan. It's a very intimate thing. You shouldn't.
Well, that's why I'm calling him Dad. See, that's the whole thing. But anyway, so all joking aside, this whole story, this doesn't stink as much as the last one. But this one, this I think is more of a sad situation. And so somebody has these games because no machine that's sorting packages shredded every one of those games.
Well, okay, but seriously, think about that in the line. If you've seen those sorting machine facility things that they have, they just kind of zoom, and they get scanned and they get rerouted. if something happened to that package and it got ripped open, games everywhere.
Right.
What do you sweep them up and you throw them in a plastic bag?
Someone found the label that was supposed to go to him. So then why don't you look? Because clearly there's a package missing a label, and there's a package that's ripped apart with all of its insides spewed about.
It made it all the way to Jersey City.
Well, it is Jersey.
Way. Well, let's not just make snap judgments about people who live in Jersey City.
Let's just talk about Jersey.
But I think it was going to Ohio, which is I think where this guy lives.
Oh, okay. So Jersey's where that package died.
Well, and so he was, looking, and obviously, like we said, it made it through every other checkpoint theoretically with no problem.
Right. Until
it got to this sorting facility where, again, it's like if I worked at this place, like if I worked, maybe I'm just not, the kind of person that usually works there. Maybe it's different. The people that work at these kind of facilities, I don't know, but it's your job. Like it's not your basement,
right.
And so if the contents of somebody's package get strewn all over the place, I don't see that, well, that's mine. Because it's open and they'll never know that it was me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's somebody's... Like, you've seen Castaway, right?
Yeah.
He spends all the time... He never opens that FedEx package. Never.
Yeah.
That washes up, he never opens it.
Well, that was FedEx.
But you know what I mean, though.
So the lesson is if you're going to send $10,000 worth of Super Nintendo games through the mail, send it FedEx.
Well, there's that. But also, it's just...
Sorry to anybody working at the post office who's listening.
So sorry.
It's not your fault.
No,
you didn't do it.
I'm
sure you worked
hope
really hard.
You didn't do it.
Yeah, unless you did do it, then for shame.
Shame on
you.
Shame.
So, we go from stolen Super Nintendo games
yes.
to the NES Classic stealing the top sales from the Wii U for the month of January.
Yeah, let's see NES Classic. I have yet to see one in the wild, though.
This is the saddest thing I think I've ever heard. The NES Classic, Mini Classic, whatever you want to call it.
The one that fits in your palm of your hands, has a very short cord.
That's really small and kind of pointless.
It's got 30 games and a save function.
So
it has merit.
The NES Classic outsold the Wii U in January. Now, part of that, to be fair, is that a lot of retailers are out of new Wii U's. But all the retailers are out of NES Classics, too. So, what I don't understand is Nintendo has to have a warehouse full of Wii U's still. They're not out of quantity. So, ship them to stores. But right now, Nintendo's doing this weird thing with the Classic and with the Wii U and even with the 3DS, where they're purposely holding back quantities because they want the Switch to make a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want someone to go to the store and be like, man, for $100 less than the Switch, I can get a good machine called the 3DS with a whole bunch of games on it. Right. Instead of this, lackluster launch
lineup. We only have 5 games. Or no, I think they increased it to 10.
I don't know, but I can tell you that my interest just keeps waning every week that goes by. I know, and I don't want it to. Like, you know me, how I was the dude. Remember, I was the guy who was like, "Yo, y'all haters, Nintendo's gonna the Switch is gonna be awesome. Like, give it a chance." And it just every piece of news that comes out just like keeps hampering my excitement.
We have to hold out until March 3rd when it comes out before we actually talk anymore.
Well, I'm not talking crap about it. I'm just saying it doesn't get me interested. It's killing some excitement for me.
Well,
but anyway,
and that's true. Yeah,
and that wasn't the point of this. Like I said, this is more almost comical in a sense, where the NES Classic that's impossible to find on store shelves anywhere, it's going for 2 to 3 times its worth on eBay, outsold the Wii U still.
Which is supposed to be readily available.
It reminds me of a story, like, I think it was a year or two ago, where, like, the entire month of, I don't know, it was August or something, the Xbox One sold, like, 40 units in Japan in a month or something. It was a week. In any case, that's hilarious. But this is kind of sad, too, but it's the nature. The Wii U's winding down, clearly. But look at how the regular Wii was still selling years and years after its launch. The Wii U's barely, the Wii U's going to be 4 years old.
I thought the Wii
5 years old.
The release of the Wii, like, I know in previous podcasts we've talked about how terribly they did it. They withheld a lot of the product so that it would create that sort of desirability. But I still say that the Wii was and is a great system with a great technology behind it. And the Wii U is just terrible because it was confusing, like we've talked about before. In fact, when you were visiting your brother 2 weekends ago, was it? I visited your store to talk to Dave and Dom and pay for that PS4.
Pay for the PS4 that you took home a week earlier.
You took it home because, I was supposed to pay for it, come in and pay for it, and you brought it home just because. Anyway. A guy was selling his Wii U, I think, or he was buying the Wii U. I don't remember. It was one of the two. And we were talking about how confusing it was.
Sure.
And he was like, yeah. He's like, when it first came out, I thought it was just an extension to the Wii as well. Yeah. And not to get into all that because we've already talked about it ad nauseum, but I find it funny too for the same reason that you do, which is I've yet to see an NES Classic in a store. Have not seen them.
Yep.
Nope.
No, and they're super impossible to find. The prices have been coming down as more have been coming out, but now there's also rumors that it's going to be discontinued come March. So, by the way, get an NES Classic if you did want one, but you've been waiting because they may not be available, and then that price is going to go back up.
Can't you just imagine like how much they had the potential to make a lot of money on this, and they're losing it.
Yeah. It's one of those perfect examples of Nintendo having a great idea that they can't fully realize and market and match to its potential. So
right.
Now speaking of that,
yeah.
So then staying with that cheesy nerdy theme of a theft, I'm gonna make a bold statement here and say that I feel like Nintendo is trying to steal extra money from its fans with this Zelda season pass garbage, which season pass I'm not a fan of anyway, but it's an expansion pass which is going to be $20 and it's going to include like 3 releases. One is like
day one.
Yeah, you go through these.
So day one expansion bonus features 3 new treasure chests, which includes exclusive in-game clothing, which includes a ridiculous shirt with the Nintendo Switch logo on it.
Ooh, a Nintendo Switch shirt.
For Link, right? Is that what I'm understanding? Oh, geez.
Because you need to advertise to the people who have just bought a Switch and are already playing it.
So the first expansion slated for the summer adds an additional Cave of Trials challenge, a hard difficulty, and an additional map feature, which could mean anything.
Which, who knows what that word vomit is.
Then the holiday pack will have a new story, dungeon, and challenges. Now, I said this to you before when we were originally talking about this. Now, I am not a fan of downloadable content. I think games should be able to be played in their full capacity without ever having to buy one thing other than the game.
Yeah.
I've never, ever owned a Nintendo game that required me to buy something else or download something else in order to play it.
Yeah, not software-wise. Nintendo's notorious for doing that with hardware. Like having add-ons like the expansion pack for the N64 or like the Wii Motion Plus remotes where you had to add the little thing to play certain games like, whatever. But my issue with this, I have an issue with season passes anyway, but I don't have a problem with DLC. What people don't realize about DLC was the original like ultimate weapon against used games, because DLC was gonna be like, don't sell your games, like we're gonna come out with more stuff for you to play later.
Sure.
So keep your games. That was why DLC was essentially invented, because it was like, hey, people are gonna keep their games longer because we're gonna give them more content for their games. It's not you beat it and you're done.
Well, and let me make an addendum to what I had said before. I don't have a problem with downloadable content. I have a problem with paying for downloadable content. I've already spent $60 on a video game. You already have me. Why are you making me pay for more?
Well, and sometimes, like with Dark Souls will come out, and then a year later, they'll come out with like an expansion pack. Well, clearly they've been working on that expansion pack in the last year. So you give them a little bit of extra money to add content to the game. Witcher 3 is a great example. Witcher 3's Blood and Wine expansion is, I think it was like $20 or $30, but it was like as much as a content as a full game would have.
Well,
so it's a ton of good stuff. So some companies do it right, and there would be some companies I would pay for if the original intention was to add value to the game later. What I really don't like is a month before a game comes out, they start talking to you about, hey, for an extra $20,
right,
you get a whole bunch of extra stuff later in the year. So you're telling me you're already planning this out, you already have this stuff all planned out, and then you blocked off a certain part so that people could buy it later. And that's what frustrates. It's the same thing with all season passes. Like even South Park, like the new South Park game, it looks awesome. I hate Ubisoft as a company. I'm going to totally buy the new South Park. But then they have a season pass for that. So hey, pay $30 and all the DLC that comes out later, you get it. Well, what DLC? Right. Well, the promise of DLC is what you're buying, and that's like the worst business practice ever.
You don't even know if you're going to get anything.
And even companies, like I love Fallout, and I knew from day one that I'd probably get the Fallout DLC because it's always really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the season pass for that. But sometimes when I beat a game, I'm like done with it. I don't want to revisit that game. Like I know not everyone's the same as me, but what I don't like though is when they have it all mapped out in advance. Like you can buy a game for $60 and then buy like the Call of Duty season pass for like $30 or whatever, and that gives you every map that comes out the rest of the year. Well, but how many maps is that? Half the time they don't even know. They're just saying, well, it's their way of squeezing extra money out of us up front, because what's happening is because here's what happened, right? So they made DLC, and then people were still selling their games, and they're like, man, well, how could we get the money still from the people that still sell the game and don't hold on to it? Oh, well, let's just sell the DLC up front before it even exists. Let's just sell it. It's like these are the things. These are things that bother me about the video game industry, because it's such a young industry, right? So like the music industry, the movie industry, that's been around forever. So those went through those like early growing pains. As the video game industry is so young still, we're living through these growing pains. We lived through online passes, where if you bought a game used, you had to pay $10 to play it online with people because boo, and they discontinued it because it was hot garbage.
Yep.
We're going through the growing pains of season passes right now, which hopefully just die as quickly as the online passes did, because it's so frustrating. Again, don't have a problem with DLC, and I don't have a problem with DLC that's good, that's worth the money. I'm sick. Like us as consumers, we have to be smarter than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't just it's like the snake oil salesman coming around being like, hey, do this, but then in the future you'll need this, so buy this too. Like buy the game, and then if you like the game, and then they show you what the DLC is going to be and it looks really good, then buy the DLC.
That's the thing. It's just I really hope that this downloadable content for Breath of the Wild isn't imperative for you to get the full gaming experience for that.
Well, I always get worried too when they say a new story. So
yeah,
now maybe
what the heck does that mean?
Well, maybe you play as if you play as say Zelda through a side story.
Oh sure,
okay.
or another or different minor character.
Whatever, totally cool. Maybe play as Link in like an unconnected story. Okay, as long as it's not part of the main story.
Yes.
You get to start in it. Because there are some games that do that. One of the most notorious I can think of recently is a game on PS3 and 360 called Asura's Wrath. That had an ending that was essentially a cliffhanger, and you had to buy DLC for the real ending. It was awful, and that was Capcom.
God.
And Capcom's known for being kind of like turds when it comes to DLC anyway. But yeah, so there was that. Now, the last thing I'll talk about with this is what I also don't like is that you don't get to choose what parts of this you want to buy.
Yeah, why do you have to buy all three?
Yeah.
I could care less about a shirt that has the Nintendo Switch logo.
Okay, so let's talk about immersion in games. What pulls you out faster than your dude wearing a T-shirt for the console you're playing?
Right.
It's just so stupid on so many levels. Like they could have made a different costume.
Yeah.
Instead of a stupid Switch T-shirt, they could have had a costume that was different. But no, let's just whoa, And so you can't buy it separately, because normally with a season pass you don't have to buy it, but you can still buy the DLC separately. Now you can't. So Nintendo has got their hand in our pocket, or they're trying, just like how they're nickel and diming us to death on these accessories.
Yeah.
Now they're doing the same thing, and Nintendo's always been a little bit behind when it comes to the online stuff, DLC, and how they do their account system and stuff like that. Well, they finally catch up, and they take the worst parts of Sony and Microsoft's plans, and they do it. Like they take the worst part of Ubisoft and Activision and EA's stupid season pass garbage, and then they do it too. And it's like, don't you guys test market anything? Like, don't you talk to your customers at all and like see how abrasive that stuff is?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you're gonna copy PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, would you copy the good things, please?
Right.
Which, you know, but no, they copy this stupid crap like season passes. So.
Boo.
So moving on from Nintendo stealing my money for more story content for the new Zelda game, we're going to move into how Sony is trying to steal a little bit of the Switch's thunder. So this, I found this interesting.
Well, it looks like there was an article that was on digitaltrends.com that talks about how Sony filed a patent for what looks to be a new portable handheld system. You know, they already have the PS Vita.
The Vita, which I think is, I want to say is like 6 years old or 5 years old as of February, I think. Like, it's old.
know.
It's been out a long time. No, it came out, did it come out when I was, I don't remember. It's like 5 or 6 years old, but like the Vita's been out a while.
So, anyway, regardless of when it came out at some point in the past.
That it did.
Apparently, there was a user who spotted this and thought, this looks kind of interesting and looks very familiar. It was filed in 2015, but the images just recently became public.
Yeah, so like, I don't know how it works in Japan, but apparently they publish like patents. So like when a patent is, I don't know if it's approved, if that's part of the laws, they have to like publish it. I actually don't know anything about that, but basically like Japan's patent office like published it recently saying, you know, whatever, and then someone, you know, just picked it up and said, holy crap, wait a minute, Sony just filed a patent for a device that basically looks like the Switch.
Right, so it looks like a tablet-sized monitor or game area.
It looks like the Switch game.
And then on either side, it looks like they took a DualShock controller and cut it in half and put it on either side.
Yeah, it looks like if you took a DualShock 4 and just stretched it out with your hands and then replaced the middle with an LCD screen. Like
that's exactly what it looks like. So it's not, as this article puts it, doesn't look as elegant as the PS Vita, but it does look like it's going to have a more ergonomic feel. Like the DualShock controller feels really good when you're holding onto it, whereas the Vita is a lot like playing an original Game Boy or playing a DS, where, you know, you've got these not very ergonomically, you know, helpful type controllers. I mean, yes, it looks a lot like a Switch. It does not appear as though they're removable, but without seeing any of the corresponding documentation.
I believe it says it's fixed, so like it wouldn't be removable. So that's one way that it somehow is different. But it does intrigue me that if this patent was filed in February, was it August of 15? I mean, if it's filed in 2015, that might have been. I mean, that was way before the Switch was announced. I mean, before anything was revealed on that. So, do you think that Sony and them were developing something side by side, and then maybe Sony backed off of it as the Vita didn't do really well? Because technically now the Vita's doing better, like it's coming back to life. Sony's not making much money off of it, but
the Vita was released in 2011 in Japan.
Okay, so it was okay, which I think for us must have been 2012, like in February of 2012. So it's 4 years. Okay. It feels longer than that, though.
It looks, you know, they're theorizing that it's a console, handheld, hybrid. The thing is that, yes, we see this patent image, and, you know, it's got all the arrows and the numbers and pointing to different things, and I'm sure there's a corresponding document which talks about what the name of each of those pieces are, because that's how patents work. You know, you patent the object with all of its functions and how everything works. But we don't know when the patent was filed for Nintendo, and maybe it just didn't make the news.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Aren't they both based in Japan?
Yeah, so if there was mandatory that it was published, it would have been published. The Switch would have been published as well. But maybe you can file for like a secrecy thing. I don't know. Maybe someone at Sony like lapsed and forgot to check the box that says like, don't show this to everybody in 2 years box or something. I don't know. But it's cool. I mean, I'd actually really like another Sony handheld only because the Vita is the nicest handheld I've ever used. It just doesn't have the games to back it up. The 3DS, if you could get the 3DS games on the Vita, it'd be like the ultimate system. It's crazy.
Well, and also somebody has to be looking for it too, because according to this article, this user Punpo is the one who spotted the patent and was apparently filed in 2015 but has recently become public. So that means that, I mean, it's been there and nobody saw it yet.
Yeah, that's very strange, but maybe they publish it, but it isn't publicly announced or something.
Oh, hail the PlayStation Shift.
The PlayStation Shift, nice. But yeah, so I'd love to see. I like competition. Competition drives a better market. So if Nintendo has the handheld market on lockdown, you don't get as good a like as customers, as consumers, we don't get the best deal.
And this appears to be, like we said, it appears to be not something like the Switch where you can take off the controllers and play it with friends. So it's still very much in Sony's wheelhouse, where it's a solo gaming experience, but they're capitalizing on the idea that this could potentially be synced up or hooked up to a television or played on the go, like the Switch is.
And it's companies file patents all the time. It doesn't mean that a product's coming out of it, and it's just fun to kind of look at. But it is what it is. So
it does look like the controllers are going to be nicer to hold on to than the Switch.
Well, I'm pretty sure like this picture it would never look like that. Like Sony is a hardware developer, so like they could make it look a lot better.
Well, I mean, but it could very well be.
But that'd be the idea, though, is that you'd have the analog sticks and the screen. It'd be like a PS4 controller with a screen on it, But
yeah, and it really does. It just looks like they took the DualShock, stretched it, and then replaced that little pad in the middle with a tablet.
Yeah,
it's just like
then they just stretched it out.
Like I can just imagine somebody building a prototype, and they just literally did that. They took a DualShock, just chopped off the ends, stuck it on a tablet, and said, "Here it is."
So yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that Logitech PS2 keyboard controller they made a while back, where it's imagine a PS2 controller where you stretch it out and have a keyboard in the middle. So like if you were playing like Final Fantasy 11 or like EverQuest Online Adventures.
What is it, Logitech?
Logitech PS2 keyboard, like PS2 controller keyboard.
I've never seen
You
this.
probably have to look up keyboard controller because PS2 is on our way of another hookup for.
Oh, okay.
Let's take a look at this thing.
Oh my god!
So it kind of just looks like someone just took the controller and just pulled it. And the best part is the keyboard comes out, so it just straight up looks like a controller that's been just pulled apart.
It looks like it doesn't. It looks to me. It looks like an Xbox controller.
Yeah, I mean it's by Logitech, so it's a little more,
You know what I mean, though? Like it's got that kind of enterprise tricorder look.
Huh.
From a nerds that are listening to Nathan.
Nate will appreciate the Star Trek shout out.
Since he was apparently yelling at the podcast, the last podcast, when I couldn't remember the race, the trill. He's like, "It's the trill! It's the trill!"
It must be so infuriating for him to listen to our podcast.
Because I try to be. I mean, I love Star Trek. I am a big fan, as I told him off podcast, that I love The Next Generation and I love Voyager, but my mom was the one that watched Deep Space Nine, so I only got kind of a third eye view or third person view of watching that, so I know the general
I was a Next Generation guy, but that was about it, and I didn't even watch all of it. I watched a lot of it when it was syndicated.
So good.
Because there was like always a time where it was on in the morning, like if I had to work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd work like 1 to 10, and it'd be on like 11 to noon. So I'd come and watch an episode every day right before going to work or whatever.
Yeah. So. Well, it's all on Netflix. We should watch that after we watch Twin Peaks.
Yes. And then lastly, moving on. So this last thing I don't really want to talk very much about.
Sure.
I'm torn because it is a pretty big deal, and I actually have some things to say about it.
Okay.
But,
you want me to set you up?
No, I'm just going to make this quick because I really don't care that much about it. So it's... PewDiePie, okay? I don't like talking about him. I'm not a fan of his style. He might be a really nice guy. I don't know. I don't care. No offense to anybody who likes him. I just don't. I don't dig his style. But he came under a lot of fire this last week, right? So these articles started coming out where it was basically like he's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, he's a fascist.
And
he's a Nazi.
Yeah, he's doing all this other stuff. He's a Nazi. Okay. So at first I read that and it's like, oh, Disney dropped him. YouTube dropped his premium YouTube Red channel show called like Scare PewDiePie, I think it's called. And but his channel, his number one channel, which is the number one channel on YouTube, is fine, And I was thinking that, and I'm like, well, and I see the articles, I'm like, wow, man, like, but that's what happens, you say stuff like that and you lose your channel. But as I was looking more into it, like, I had to say something because this is one of the highest levels of like character assassination I think I've ever seen. Like, so many things are taken out of context of what he did and didn't say that, like, he's basically being demonized when he doesn't really deserve it. And I'm like the first one to say, like, I don't like him at all. I just don't think, I don't like him for real reasons. If you're going to hate him for things that actually happened.
Yeah, there was an article that I read that was on Forbes website that said something to what it's agreeing with what you're saying.
Okay.
Like, don't call him a racist and a fascist and a Nazi and all of these, an anti-Semite, because he's not.
He's not.
And you're save those labels for the people who actually
and you're
are.
taking it away. I think you take away from those words when you just throw them around.
Yes.
And I've always not liked that. And that's happening a lot lately in society. Like, the word racist and fascist and stuff gets thrown around a lot. And it's like, one thing I always tout on this podcast, I'm not going to get crazy political on you guys, but like, one thing I always tout is like, I tout like responsibility, and I tout like, non-hypocrisy. Like, those are staples of what we always talk about here, and personal responsibility. And so, like, when when I see things like this, it worries me that people are so quick to read a headline only, kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, they read a headline and then they retweet it, or they read a headline and that's it. And I think maybe that's why we did the podcast the way we do this, because we wanted to go in depth with things, because we're in like a headline news era where all we do is read a headline and you share it. You read a headline and you share it, and then you read the article and you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't say at all what the head, or
I didn't mean that, or whatever. I mean, The Onion is the perfect example.
Yes.
People think and share Onion articles believing them to be true. I've seen it. I've seen people do it, and it's like, I'm sorry, but do you realize that that's from The Onion and it's not an actual news story? And PewDiePie reminds me of a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but this friend of mine is the kind of person who loves to play devil's advocate, will disagree with you just to see what you do, just to see what you say, and gets a real big kick out of it. And it's infuriating for somebody like me, because I try to understand a person's behavior and understand their empathy response and understand how they view the world. And when they say something that's a complete 180 of what I understand them to be, I can't understand. Like, I don't understand. I'm like, how can you say that? Because I know, because of these 5 reasons, that you're not that person. Like, why are you saying this?
Yeah.
And then as it comes down to it, the reason they did it was just to see what I would say or what that other person would say when they kind of poke the bear. And
Right.
PewDiePie reminds me of that kind of a person where, the only reason he did what he did was because there's a website that exists called Fiverr, where people will do pretty much anything for $5.
For $5, which is freaking hilarious. I was not aware of this website.
Oh, you weren't?
I had no idea. So, like,
I mean, it's usually things like, oh, I'll draw your caricature.
Yeah.
I'll make you in an anime. I'll make you into an anime character, or I'll Photoshop a picture for you. And people will just do it for $5, whatever. And so they'll tout, what they're good at. Like, for me, I'd be like, oh, I'll make you into a bead sprite, or whatever it might be.
But you are good at it.
Thank you. And so apparently I haven't seen it, so I don't know if like the people were like, I'll put anything you want on a sign for $5. And so he said, okay, put this on the sign. And the people did it.
Yeah. And I'm the first one to say, like, everything he's done to get people riled up about this is in incredibly poor taste. Like, it's not even close to me to be funny at all. It's not funny. It's really stupid. But like I look at him like he's essentially trying to be like a Howard Stern type shock jock. Like he's trying to do things to get people to watch him, good or bad. Like he's almost like he's gone to like, and this isn't again a political dig. It's almost like he went to the Trump school of like making the deal, because like I'm talking way before presidential runs.
Sure.
Like he knew that like good or bad, get your name on the news, get your face in the
Right.
news, and that was all before politics stuff. I'm just talking like when he was doing The Apprentice.
Well,
I mean, he was just trying to get people to watch him. Howard Stern's probably a better example, because Howard Stern will do things that are controversial, so that people go what, and they'll get to talking about him. Even if they hate him, they're
Right.
still listening to him.
Well, it's the adage, and you don't have to bring in any political or celebrity or anything into it. It's the old adage that there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right. Exactly. It's that simple. And like a couple months ago, he did the whole like, if I hit 50 million subscribers, I'm deleting my channel. And then he deletes the other one, like his not main channel. Everyone's like, "Oh, you got me, you tricked me."
You got us, Beauty Pie.
Who thought he was going to do that? But he got a bunch of
hoped.
subscribers. You subscribed to him just
I
to get
did
it.
because I didn't
'Cause you were
want to see
hoping.
his stupid face.
But
No,
and
his
that's
face isn't stupid. I don't like him either, because I find his humor not to be humorous, and he kind of a lot of his subscribers are adolescent, and there's a reason.
yeah. I mean, and again, we're not attacking his character, because if you like his style, there's nothing wrong with that. We don't.
Mhm.
And so like that's why I wanted to say something about this, because I'd be the first one, if he did something I didn't like, to just bury him for it, because I don't like him anyway. But like this was one of those times where he, was it in bad taste? Yes. But is he actually these horrible things? Like, should he have lost his, like, should Disney have dropped him over it? I don't even know if I could say that. But what's tough is, we talk about freedom of speech, and people don't understand what that really means. And freedom of speech is just that you can't be prosecuted by the government for what you say. And there's even limitations to that. But for the most part, you can't be prosecuted by the government for what you say. So, but that doesn't mean that the things you say don't have consequences.
I was just going to say something, and then I realized that you're the one that told me what I was just going to say.
Oh, well, maybe the listeners don't know.
Well, no, it was along the lines of what you said. You're like, the freedom of speech is just that the government can't persecute you. It doesn't mean that you won't get dropped by your sponsors and who's backing you. And unfortunately, people equate them to be the same thing. You can't drop me. I'm freedom of speech. And it's like, yes, but
like the Duck Dynasty guys, and they were like, you're trampling on my freedom of speech if you want to cancel my show because I said these things that you may not agree with. No, because that channel has advertisers, and those advertisers pay the money. Like, that's just how the system works. It's not trampling your freedom of speech. You never had true freedom of speech. In my store, now that it's my store, I guess I technically do.
Right.
But even I don't technically. But when I worked at GameStop, I didn't have freedom of speech. I couldn't just go to a customer and tell them they were an idiot.
Right.
Because I felt like I would get fired for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I should be fired for that. So again,
agreed.
Didn't want to talk a lot about this because, frankly, I don't really care. But it's a big deal. And, there's a lot of takes out there. And who probably cares about mine, since I'm not a fan of his anyway. But it just was one of those things. Like, I feel like so in Bizarro world lately, like when I'm the one sticking up for the Switch back then, not anymore, and now I'm sticking up for
PewDiePie,
PewDiePie Felix, and I just don't care about it at all. But I don't like seeing things misrepresented, I guess, and so I just want to throw it out there and be like, look, the guy, in my opinion, is kind of a tool bag. Don't like his comedy style, but he's not like what they're trying to make him out to be.
Right.
Hate him because you don't like his comedy. That's a fine reason not to like him. That's the best reason not to like him.
Right.
But don't hate him because this new era of like reading a headline and then bouncing.
Mm-hmm.
I originally wasn't going to upload these to YouTube, or if I was, like the podcast, I was going to upload them in like 5-minute segments. Like, every, little bit we did would be like a different segment, because I kept thinking, well, that's what people want. People want, they just want to get to the meat and potatoes.
Right,
they don't
we
want,
have like the 5-minute conversation about each thing or whatever.
And I was like, but I know there's people out there that want to actually go in depth with conversation, and we're not all about this headline grabbing era, and so I know a lot of people do, and that's fine. And those people will enjoy what they like then, and we're going to talk more in depth about things. And I just I want to buck that trend a little bit and just be like, we have to dig deeper. And because I was the first one to admit, like, I saw the things initially, and I was like, oh, well, I don't like this guy anyway. So, but I started reading about it, I'm like, wow, this actually it doesn't. I mean, it's in bad taste, but it's not like he's.
It is.
You know, I mean, people throw around people are like Hitler and stuff like that all the time, and like they don't realize what they're saying. I don't think.
No, it's an incredibly serious accusation, and it's thrown around a lot, as we mentioned before. And this Forbes article does a really good job of kind of putting it into perspective. That you may have never heard of this guy PewDiePie, but he's a force to be reckoned with, at least in terms of YouTube and the internet and all of that.
He has a lot of,
and he may be controversial
publicity
to some things, but he's never, quoting this article, he has never seriously advocated a racist agenda.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to, is that people are seeing it, taking his videos out of context and using them as fodder for their own agenda of saying, see, look, he's a racist. See, look, he's a fascist. He's a neo-Nazi. He wants, death to these people, and, Hitler and blah, 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 blah,
right.
And taking it completely out of context. And I think you use the term crucifying him for it, where it's like, okay, but really, he's just, he likes poop and fart jokes on the internet and plays video games.
And there are people out there that they think anything's on the table for humor. And there are people that'll throw out racist jokes because to them it's just a joke and it's meant to be funny. It's not like he was saying it to offend the other person, even though that might be the outcome.
Sure.
And now with him, though, I do believe he was trying to spark some outrage. I don't think he realized it was going to be as big as it did, or he might have, probably toned it down, because he's smart enough to know that he wants to keep the fame he has and the money. Like, he's got a good thing going. He doesn't want to ruin that, And
it's just him doing these videos. There's no producer telling him, "Good,
right.
Felix, you can't say that."
There's no PR person walking around.
No. I mean, you can say, he's Swedish, and you can make a very broad generalization that European humor is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can throw any of that stuff around. And it could all very well just contribute to this thing. Or he could just have the personality like my friend, who will say it just to see how you react.
Yeah.
And he doesn't believe it in the slightest. And that, I think, is more his personality, PewDiePie's personality, that's, let's just see what will happen.
and some people think it's funny when they make other people mad.
Yeah,
which is infuriating
like
to me.
That, and I hate that.
And I hate that, but that's what some people do too. Like, some people, it's really funny to upset other people. Like, they love it, It's and it's just, it is whatever. But again,
bro fist it to you, man.
Just obviously he's paying consequences for his actions, which I do think were stupid and really, like, there was no, it was not tasteful at all. But again, that's him. Like, that's his character. He's never been like a respectful, nice. I don't want to say nice, but I guess like a respectful, like, decent, human being, gentleman. Like, that's not his character. His character is to be outlandish and ridiculous.
Right.
So.
But here's why I don't feel bad for PewDiePie. You want to know why?
Why?
In 2015, in December 2016, Forbes named PewDiePie as the highest earning YouTuber, with his annual income reaching 15 million. That's 15 million. I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't either.
And obviously he could probably retire now and never do another YouTube video, and I'm sure I would be happy for that. I don't wish any ill will. I just don't find it funny.
But the best part about us, though, like, we just don't watch it then.
No, we don't. That's
the other part of this.
That's exactly what the Forbes article said too. It's like, you don't like them, just hit unsubscribe.
There's only, I think, hold on, let me count them real quick in my head. 58 jillion YouTube channels out there. So if you don't like one,
right,
you can just ever go there. You can block it and never see it.
You can never see PewDiePie's face ever again. And instead watch things like Table 8 Productions.
Oh, look at that. Look at giving a shout out to the Table 8 guys.
Table 8.
I saw some on Facebook about Mr. Brunage bringing back Rockumentary.
Woo woo.
So, but anyway, guys, that's our show as always. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at GameTradeGreg.
I'm at Game Talk Jen.
And if you guys have any questions, we'd love to read them on the show. No one's given us any, so we're just not doing it.
Tweet us.
Tweet at us if you want. Whatever. You can always hit us up on the Facebook page too, whether it's the Game Trade one or the Game Talk Radio one.
If tweeting ain't your thing, you can send me an email. GameTalkGen@gmail.com.
Right.
I had to think about that one for a second.
But we just want to say thanks always for listening, everybody, and have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.